Good morning everyone and welcome to Unit 2.6 of AP Macroeconomics. In today's video we're going to be discussing real versus nominal GDP, a concept which extends to all facets of the AP Macroeconomics course. Let's begin by going over a quick rapid review session of what GDP is. Now, by definition, the GDP of a country is the total value of all finished goods produced in a given period of time. This could be quarterly or yearly, but just for the scope of your AP Macroeconomics exam, we're going to stick to the yearly GDP. We can calculate this by summing up all the spending done in order to make those goods, which is C plus I plus G plus NX, or X of N, whatever you'd like to call it, where C stands for consumer spending, I stands for investment spending, G for government spending, and NX for net exports, which is exports minus imports. If this concept isn't clear, make sure you rewatch this section because it is by far the most important concept throughout the AP Macroeconomics exam. Now, going on to the topic of today's video, which is real versus nominal GDP. Now, a really simple difference between the two is just the word that precedes GDP, real and nominal. And in any case, in any part throughout economics, the word real always implies that the value has been adjusted for inflation. And hence, we can conclude that real GDP is more depictive of changes in real output and helps us understand whether output has actually increased, or rather, if the increase in number of course, the GDP, so if the increase in GDP is just due to inflation. And we'll explain that with a practical example. Now, get out your notebooks, get out your pens and papers, and calculate the GDP for 2018. I've made the mistake of including the total column, so you could just add that up, or you could go over the quick formula, which is the price of a good multiplied by its weight, and then of course the sum of that. So $8 into 500,000, and then the so on, same for wheat, corn, and sugar. You can pause the video and play in a minute. Just try and do this yourself. Okay, good. You're back. If you got $5.3 million as your answer, you can give yourself a pat on the back because that's correct. Now, round 2 of mathematics. Let's calculate the real GDP, the nominal GDP for 2019. Same thing again, pause the video and feel free to do it yourself. Now that you're back, let's take a look at the answer. If you got $8 million, absolutely on point once again. Feel free to give yourself a pat on the back. And I hope you didn't cheat by just summing up the totals, because that's not fair, guys. Now, the definition of inflation is, of course, a sustained rise in prices in an aggregate economy over time. Keeping that in mind, the real GDP for 2019 is $550,000, which is the quantity of steel sold. Wheat production, which is, of course, 300,000 units of wheat, 400,000 units of corn, and 200,000 units of sugar, multiplied by the prices from the 2018 basket, which gives us a total of $6.3 million. And that's $1.7 million less than the nominal GDP for 2019. This, ladies and gentlemen, is inflation. Now, let me go over how we just did that, because there's a $1.7 million disparity between our 2018 value, between the nominal value of 2019 and the real value of 2019. Now, the idea of real GDP revolves more around quantity, not price. So your first step is to take the quantities from the year whose real GDP you wish to calculate. Your step 2 is to take the prices from the base year. And step 3 is to multiply. And that's how you get your real GDP. Now, let me give you a quick example by going back. Just jot down these quantities: 550,000, 300,000, 400,000, and 200,000. Okay, now that you've made a note of that, let's take a look at the base prices, or the prices from the year 2018. $8, $3, $2, and $1. If you multiply these prices with the quantities from this slide, you're going to end up with 550 into 8, 300 into 3, 400 into 2, and 200 into 1, which is $6.3 million. And that's how you got your real GDP for 2019. Now, let's move on to another important part of the AP Macroeconomics exam, which is the GDP deflator. It's another index that's used to measure inflation, and the formula is nominal GDP of year N divided by the real GDP of the same year into 100, and it outputs the percentage of inflation. Let's take a look at this. Let's say, for simplicity's sake, the nominal GDP of 2022 is 181, and the real GDP is $100 worth of output. Our GDP deflator, upon inputting these values into the formula above, will give us 181, because that's 1.81 into 100. Now, to calculate the rate of inflation from here, just subtract 100, which is the value of your... Just subtract 100 from here, and you're going to get 81%. So essentially, it's like calculating percentage change. That's really it here. Now that you've got inflation at 81%, you can give yourselves a pat on the back. But remember, as economists, we must strive to make sure inflation is less than 3%. Something that the Biden administration fails to do. Okay, sorry, I just had to say it. Come on. And that's all for today's video. Muchas gracias, and thank you so much for watching. I'll have the link to this PPT in the description below. And sorry for the irregularity. I was busy with my exams. That's a bad excuse, but thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next one.